Welcome to another episode of Subconscious Realms International Roundtable. I'm your host, General Lee, and in attendance we have our extraordinary co-host, the host and creator of No Apologies, Sir Raven Keefer. He, he's phenomenal. You all know. And for tonight, Raven, we've been looking forward to this for a while now. Since we've arranged it, to be exact, for tonight we're being joined by incredible elite level. He is an author, and he did have a podcast, but it's more of I'd say documentary style now. Would you say, Zero?
It's all over the place, to be honest. I do book reviews. I've done interviews. I've done just talking about my personal experience. So it's basically a hybrid.
Everything really, and then I guess it's brilliant. Regardless, it is spot on. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the host and creator of Demonosphere and Beyond, Zero.
Nice to be here. Pleasure.
Now then, Zero. Yeah, and Raven, you've not spoke with Zero before, but I think you'll appreciate his approach. I think it is fascinating, mate. I really do.
Well, I got to tell you guys, honestly, General kind of caught me off guard, and I was doing so much research on something else that I didn't have time to do much background, Zero. So let's start with this. You said that you have written some books. Can you fill people in on the books that you've written?
Well, my first attempt was basically my attempt to get all the information out of my head, but it wasn't very organized. But my second book, the Grimoire of Damnation, is basically me documenting my journey through spells into the abyss. So it starts with the mental and physical preparation for that journey. And then the last spell in that book is contacting the entities that are needed in order to gain access into the abyss and get through it. And then currently, I am now writing a book that will be titled God is Gray, and that is on the whole spectrum of angels. The dark ones, the fallen ones, some of the light ones as well, that choose to interact with me. And that's currently in the works. It's a ever-changing project, since it's kind of like I'm getting more information and being told to put more into the book. So I couldn't really give you a timeline as to when this book is going to be finished, but it is in the works.
Nice. Now, just in case somebody hasn't caught you before, and probably on my podcast site they won't, where can they find the books that you have in print now?
Right now, I only have a digital copy. It's on a website on Square. The link is too long. I'm sure General Lee has the link.
In here.
But I can also email you if you want me to. I can email the link to you as well. I offer services as well as I sell other occult books as well.
Nice. So just so people know that I don't like people to think that we're playing. How did you start out getting into studying the occult?
Christianity failed me, basically. It seems to be a common story. What happened was I was just, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I was going to the Kingdom Hall. I also had exposure to other forms of Christianity through other family members, and it just didn't sit right with me. And so once I was able to, like in my 20s, I started studying, alternate beliefs, and was trying to figure out what I felt was right and wrong, and what to drop and what to keep. And I started off with meditation when I was having this very stressful job. So it started off with trying to reduce stress, but then I found out that meditation could lead into a whole bunch of other things. And then I just went down the rabbit hole, started studying everything I could get my hands on, and just kept going deeper and deeper.
Yeah, that's meditation is a doorway, and a lot of people completely miss that.
And meditation is foundational to, as far as I know, every magical practice that I've come upon.
That's it. So you said that you went through many different types of literature. Where did you, for lack of a better word, what primary occulted literature did you focus on? East Indian, Chinese, Asian?
Well, when you first start off, you really don't know where to go. So the common thing is to get into Western occultism. But as I did further studies, I figured out that a lot of the Western occult philosophies come from the East. So more recently, I've been trying to find information on Eastern practices. The only problem is it's very hard finding something genuine, because it's hard translating some of that information into English. And you may have like these people who go over to these countries and study things, like people with a PhD and stuff like that, but they don't spend enough time in order to get a real understanding of these practices and the culture behind them, because the culture a lot of times determines what these practices turn into. The people who usually write books spend like a couple of months with these people asking questions, and all they're worried about is writing a book. They're not worried about doing these philosophies and these belief systems justice. So a big part of my journey has been searching for that authentic knowledge.
Yeah, a lot of times you find they do they do an analysis and opinion book rather than anything that's non-subjective. Um, it becomes a reflection of what they've experienced and seen, rather than any kind of a delve into the actual cultural ideologies behind the practices. It's very, very difficult. How long have you been doing this?
Around 17 years.
You came in right as the libraries were being cleaned out, and a general and I were just talking about this. In the 80s, you could go into a university library and pull out the card by subject, and you might have to go back to the most musty, stinky, mildewed section of the library down in the basement, but you would find tomes and texts written in the 1800s that had occult information, and serious, Jung and Alcott type people that were serious about the culture and the ideologies behind the practices. Those things started getting cleaned out and vanishing in the early 90s. And by, say, 2000, you're lucky if you could even find the tomes.
It's very bizarre, isn't it? It's very bizarre.
Well,
It's not bizarre at all, because there are people. My bad. There are people who are suppressing this knowledge. There are people who are suppressing the power. But I find that it's in our nature therefore it's going to come to the surface no matter what anybody does. It's just a matter of time. And I feel like there's a resurgence of this knowledge, coming forth and people searching for this knowledge.
Yeah,
so,
I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry, well, we mentioned this. It's come up a few times, hasn't it, Raven? Where, like, for example, you'll be a book, and if it's in digital format, it'll be like slightly modified, like not how it should be. And that's what I mean by it's bizarre how they would make changes. Well, I'm not quite sure why it would warrant the changes.
Well, it's like Manly Hall's Secret of All Ages is available online now, and it's maintained by an organization. You would hope that it was completely intact, but there's no way for us to know this if we didn't have the original.
Oh, yeah. No, mate.
However, I do feel that the book is still very enlightening.
Oh yes.
Manly P. Hall blew my mind.
Oh, well, you should see the playlist I have of Manly Hall on my YouTube channel.
You got lots of mate.
I found a place that had put up his lectures, and literally I have his whole lecture series on my YouTube channel. People underestimate. It doesn't matter what order he came from. It doesn't matter what his background was. People get all indignant because he was a 33rd degree. I think he was actually higher than that, and that's the reason why they poisoned him. But the fact of the matter is you consider the source when you consider the information, but when you see the overwhelming abundance of what Manly Hall put out, it's not hard to figure out why they poisoned him in the end.
Well, you have to also consider what the person says. Even though he's considered a Mason, he really spoke out against the secret societies. He actually called them the true black magicians because they were the ones who were acting as gatekeepers when the knowledge should be out in the public. And, it was just like, from what I've read, Crowley was the same way, where he believed that the public should have the knowledge, and the people who actually accepted the knowledge were the ones who were, the ones who should have it. And they demonized him as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then you have Rudolf Steiner, another person who was poisoned while trying to affect the change and release information. A lot of people underestimate Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and a few of the others from the late 1800s and early 1900s. But I've always said, if you take a text and you read it and you gain something from it, it doesn't matter if it's a graphic novel. If you read something and you gain something from it, then you haven't wasted your time. And that's where a lot of people miss out on things that they could, even if it's gleaning the text. You take what you know and you take what's presented, and if it doesn't coincide, and if it doesn't, you make a footnote of it. Hey, this is not exactly the way that I'm thinking here. And maybe sometime down the road, you'll find something that says, okay, now I need to change this a little bit. Or it verifies that your thought pattern was normal. But a lot of people won't rely on their intuition either. And they've been conditioned away from that. And that's where the occult really comes in. Occult, as far as a practice, I tell everybody I'm a mystic. I'm not an occultist. But I have obviously walked that road in order to be a mystic. But a lot of folks just will not trust their intuition. And so they won't even delve into these things. And I think Steiner and Manly Hall and many of those others knew that the only people who were going to get this are the people who were genuinely intended to. Everybody else would just look at it and kind of shrug their shoulders and go on about their business, ignoring it. So you mentioned Manly Hall. Who are some of the others that you would recommend people pick up and have a look at?
Definitely Manly P. Hall. I've had spirits recommend Blavatsky, but I am not very familiar with her. I've gleaned her texts, but it was at a time when the information that was presented to me really didn't sink in, to be honest. Um, Authors, G. De Laval, who is the author of um, Black Magic Evocation of Shem HaMephoresh, as well as the Sefer Yurak Ruishat. He's also the author of a couple of other books that I've had within my library at one time or another. His approach is very complex, but if you get it, like, it works very well. He deals with a lot of the meaning of Hebrew letters, the gematria, the 72 Shem HaMephoresh, the 27 spirits that are like the feminine and opposite of the Shem HaMephoresh, the Sefer Yurak Ruishat. Let's see, who are my other favorites? I don't know. I've been all over the place, honestly.
Yeah. It's like me. I tell everybody, if you pick something up, then, take out of it what you can. And there are so many sources now, but you have to be careful too. What you were talking about is with the people who go over and study and come back and write a really quick novel. You end up with so much guru stuff that's completely irrelevant. It's not overly effective, and I'm awful. I tell people, hey, look, if somebody is genuinely helping you for donations or whatever, that's great. But if somebody charges you $5,000 to come down for a weekend, you got to question this.
Yeah, and I always try to encourage people not to listen to one voice. Do your own research. Like you said before, rely on your intuition, because everybody's approach to magic is going to be different. Everybody can't accept the same thing, and I have no problem with making a living off of magic, but I do have a problem with emptying people's pockets in order to teach them that magic or utilize that magic in their favor.
Well, we're gonna have to talk about the difference between light and black magic, and I laugh
Yes.
every time somebody says this, light and black magic, and I'm like, there's really not a difference except for what you do with it.
Exactly.
So, what's your take on this?
It's if you study the old way with the old witches and shamans and healers and stuff like that, back they weren't worried about separating magic. They did what they had to do. And they did what they felt was right. If it was so-called baneful magic, they weren't worried about like a threefold karmic kickback. They had spells that were just all over the place, from healing, from helping with birth, from protection to curses, and a lot of them were very gray, so to speak. And I feel that magic is about balance. There are certain spirits that will force you to put a curse on certain people, and it's not necessarily to be malicious, because if you do a curse the right way, it can serve as a lesson. And the curse is not meant to be on there forever. It's meant to be there until the person gets the lesson. And it's kind of like when I make an example, sometimes I say I've used the example of Beauty and the Beast. The witch cursed the prince because he was arrogant and he was basically, an ass. And he had to learn to, have some empathy, have some love. And once he found that empathy, the curse was lifted, once he changed. And I feel like that's a perfect example of proper curse work.
Well, with me, I have a saying, and General's heard it more than once. And if anybody's listening to my podcast, they've heard it too. I always say favor, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. Now, interestingly enough, I had somebody send me an email and say, that's a curse. And I got thinking about it. Well, if you're somebody who wants to be miserable and hateful and nasty and take advantage of people, and I wish you favor, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your life that is needed, then I have cursed you because you can no longer act the way that you are. If those things are fulfilled. I hadn't thought about it from that aspect. The old saying is one man's demon is another man's angel.
Correct. I've heard that.
So it was interesting, excuse me, for me to get an email that the guy says, that's a curse to some people. And I'm like, I hadn't even thought about it that way. But, I'm one of them. I don't care what it is. I don't, even these heads of state that are just, god awful human representatives of humanity. I wish them favor, because if they're favored, then they have to quit doing what they're doing. It's an odd type of magic, but you think about how many times I have said it in my podcasts with the intent that it be so. That fits right into Crowley's teachings.
So, Raven, just for the benefit of the people who will be listening to my YouTube channel, can you give some history, some background into how you got started in occult practices and basically what you're about and your podcast before we get to
unlike you, I hadn't had such a bad experience with the standard religions, but I grew up native, and I was taught herbs and healing medicine. But I was also taught different ceremonies and things like that you do, and it's a natural progression. And when you get bored, I hate to say that to you all, when you get bored, you get into things that you shouldn't. That idle hands is actually quite true. So I started studying Crawley, and I started studying all kinds of other things, which led me to various invitations into esoteric libraries to do research for people. In exchange for that, I got to do my own research, and here we are 40 years later almost, and it's like, I don't do rituals and things like that. And now I have to say I did one about a year ago, but I've stepped away from the ritual and the that kind of thing. I've gone more into the mysticism, studying the symbology, studying the occult, studying esoteric literature and individuals. You got to know what poison is in order to cure it. Well, my early days. Have you ever heard of a black candle?
No, I'm not familiar with the term. If it means something more than just a black candle.
I don't even know if you can find. I don't even know if you can find the literature or the resources anymore. But I had to know what the darkness actually was. So I made a black candle decades ago, and I lit it, and it created a whole new a whole new appreciation for people like Crowley and other ones that were trying to do these big ceremonies. Because not a lot of people want to say that magic is fake. They watch Disney and these other places way too much, and they don't understand that magic is very subtle, but it's very effective. And there's a reason why all these rituals and all these things have been passed down from the Magi all these years. And there's a reason why some of these bloodlines and other groups have tried to occult that information all these years. For me, it was a matter of, I need to know what this is and how it affects things around me and what I can do with it. So that's how I got into it. And that's how I worked my way through it. And when I realized that I was stepping into paths and places that I really didn't want to hang out in, that's when I stepped back and started doing it from a research aspect and from what people would, I hate to use light and dark because it's really gray, and started doing things from a very gray aspect. I think one of the mistakes people make is seeing that it's light or it's dark, and it's really not. It's a gray area. It's intuition. It's like what you were saying about putting a curse on somebody. If it's done the right way, then it's beneficial. People who are in church would go, well, I say, well, now look at Job. Job was cursed. And people just like, what? I said, well, Job was cursed. He was given demons and illnesses and all kinds of things. And when he did not change, then the curse was lifted. And, I say that's wrong. I can't imagine that anybody who thought it was benevolent would do that to someone. But so there's where I go with the religious part. If this is a true benevolent being, why would it allow someone who has been loyal and has been a good person to be treated? But yeah, it's been a long road. And I say again, I had the luxury of having libraries in the 80s and 90s that you could still walk in and search by subject and find texts and tomes and books that you had to wear gloves to touch. Today, it's not that way. Today, you're lucky to even be able to find a Manly Hall text somewhere,
Yeah. Well, fortunately, with technology, we've had some people who have, done a spectacular job of scanning things and turning things into PDFs. So if you know where to look, you can still get the information.
I think you said that I guess it has that little bit of progression of capabilities on what, I think that is it. It's a good next step, so to speak. Because I bet there's I wouldn't like to guess the amount of books that we'll probably never get to see. But by, I mean, I'd love to know what's going on in how many books in the Vatican.
Well, that's one thing about meditation. Meditation allows you to do a lot of things as far as connecting with others, connecting with information. Somebody says, well, that's an occult practice. Well, it is. It's hidden. They've hidden it from you because they don't want you to learn.
Yes, man.
It's really what it's about. Oh, meditate on this scripture. Well, no, that's not what meditation is for. Now, nothing wrong with meditating on something that you've learned. I got no problem with that. But if that's all you're doing with meditation, you're wasting a lot of energy and a lot of time that you could be using for other things. For me, to meditate and astral project has been something that I've done since I was young. And that's another reason for me to get into the occult research, is because I needed to understand what the system was and why it worked the way it did, and why you were able to just leave your body and go do things and remember it, and find out later you remembered was accurate.
Do you know, Raven? It's I'm glad you just brought astral projection up, because that's what I was going to ask next. I don't know if you're familiar with, Himmler. He had an extensive library of occult grimoires. So we're led to believe. Really interested. I wonder what books he had in his library. Does anybody know
about his collection? But I know it was extensive. I would have loved to have spent a few months going through
it. I think he was like 1,200 books or something daft like that.
Did you hear who he was talking about? Himmler?
I'm not familiar with Himmler, not thoroughly.
Himmler, with the Nazis, he was deep into the occult, and they scoured the planet for books before the war. And he had a very extensive library. I cannot imagine what grimoires and tomes he had. it would have been an immense collection, and who knows from what origins and what base. A lot of people when they get into the Nazi occult part, they try to make it some fantastic, hyper, inflated movie, and they ignore that they did it. They did it because they knew that there was knowledge there that could be used. Um, a lot of people think that that was lost and gone after the war, but what they don't understand is the vast majority of the people who practiced those occult practices and did that research didn't die during the war. They just moved somewhere else. So that information and that knowledge is somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, we had a lot of people defect during World War II over to America, and a lot of those Germans became scientists for the U.S. government, whether it was by choice or by force. You had a lot of the people who were leaders in the Nazi Party who also moved to South America. Um, and I think even like parts of Africa, I'm not sure, but definitely South America and North America. And so, they, of course, they're going to take their research with them.
Yes.
And they don't, like the powers that be don't want us knowing about these occult things. So what do? They demonize the research. They're like, oh, this was by the bad guys, and so don't even touch that. Like this was evil. Then they make these movies where it's like, oh, all they wanted to do was raise demons from hell to take over and basically, destroy the world.
Well, the other thing too is like they made that whole thing with the demon that the Germans summoned. What was that? It's a comic book, and then they made movies.
Hellboy.
Oh,
There,
you got me there, mate. I know it, but
the
I
thing
love
about it,
Hellboy.
well, I enjoy the movies and I enjoyed the graphic novels, but my thing is,
you might be actually.
is that they do it in such an over dramatic and over fantasized style that when you actually bring out real information about like the Krill Society and so forth, or the Vril Society, and the other things that they did, people won't believe it. It's just like they've made such a mess out of Aleister Crowley that if you actually presented them real research on Crowley, they would never believe you. It's part of the process. So when you talk about magic, I did a whole series about magic on my podcast site, and I talked about propaganda magic. I talked about marketing magic, language magic. These are all arts combined with sciences to affect the environment around you, or to affect people around you. That's Crowley's base definition for magic, and it goes back to the Magi's of Persia. And people completely miss the fact, well, it can't be magic. That's just people drawing pictures and using colors and displays, and they don't understand that it's no different than drawing a sigil on the ground and performing a ceremony. That's the problem. They've boxed these things into such small categories. Well, this is real and that's not. And they don't understand that their reality is a lot less real than what they think it is.
Oh yeah, like and it's insane how much of our reality is steeped in magic. Like it's all over us, and we take all of it for granted because we're taught certain things are normal and other things aren't.
Well, this is something that I've talked about on my podcast, but I've never talked about it with general, and your audience might appreciate this too. I'm a comedian. That's not only do I do all this hard expose research and occult things, but I am a stand-up comedian. Been that way for almost 3 decades now. And I use magic all the time as part of my presentation. It's called neurolinguistics. It's speech magic. My job is to use neurolinguistics to make a connection between people. So one of the favorite things with salesmen or customer service people is feel, felt, found. Somebody calls in and they have a complaint, and the first thing you do is you say, "Oh, I understand how you feel." And there have been many people who have felt that way as well, and I felt that way trying to deal with these things. But what I have found is, and then you present your solution, or you present a process of solution. And what happens is you're using neurolinguistics to diffuse the situation, to create a relationship between you and this person on the phone. And finally, in the last step, you are presenting a solution that you have been taught to use. They have no idea you're doing this. Well, in comedy, you use magic the same way. My job is to make you know me. When I walk out, my first job is to say, "Hey, y'all, have you ever?" And by doing that, I have created a connection. Have you ever stubbed your toe really bad in the morning, first thing? Um, by doing that, I have used the art of speech and the science of neurolinguistics to make a connection, to make a bridge. My next step is to make them forget about everything that's going on around them, the trouble at home, the trouble at work, the terrible drive that they had in, and the terrible drive they're going to have getting home. Is to make them completely forget all about that for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And if you use Crowley's definition of magic, the art of speech, and the science of neurolinguistics, you will succeed in bending them to your will, and they will be laughing regardless of what their life circumstances are at the time. That is a very poignant for me, but a very pointed and acute display of how magic will work on people. And most people can relate to giving themselves up to a comedian for a half hour or an hour. And they don't realize that if a comedian is good at doing it, they have worked an actual magic spell on them.
And it's funny that you use the term neurolinguistics, because these days they put scientific definitions to things in order to make it seem less magical. Like you have scientists that study how sound affects people, how colors, how pictures, like you brought up, how certain words, trigger people, the responses and stuff like that. And they're doing these studies in order to learn how to control society, or come up with these different gadgets, to help um, manipulate, like your emotions for yourself. But they charge like lots of money. For example, like with binaural beats, they have these binaural beats that basically put you into an altered state in order to change your brain, your brain chemistry and your frequency.
Well, they do it with
They do it with what? I'm sorry.
They do it with television.
Yeah.
Television by design puts people into an alpha brain state, and they are literally the subject of hypnosis at that point.
That's why they call it programming.
Exactly. People just do not, it's one of the first podcasts that I did was television programming, and I explained how it worked. People just don't understand that magic is a real thing. Now, the technology aspect of it is just improving the science or expanding the science to make it more effective. But it's still about bending masses of people to the will of those who are in charge of it.
And it's funny because somebody brought out to me that if magic was not real, why would the CIA have a declassified file on magic?
Oh, yeah. And the other thing is, whether you're talking about the Tua de Danann, or you're talking about the Magi in Persia, or you're talking about the shaman here in the United States, and I don't really like that term, accurate, but you do have shaman in other places. The Yogai and the Magi in India and China. Magic has never gone away. Occulted, yes. Hidden, altered through time. But it's never gone away. The practice is still there. Sometimes it's blatant and in your face. I always use the example of the marble statues that bleed and show the signs of the crucifixion. What they did is they used a porous stone on the inside. They covered it with what looked like a hard surface, but you could literally put the liquid in the bottom of it, and over time it would be wicked up through the stone in the middle, and it would come out exactly where you designed it to come out at. That is a very good example of magic. That is art, the crafting of the statuary, and science, understanding the difference between the stones, to affect your will upon the people who saw it bleed.
And it's funny that you say that magic evolved, because I was just reading this book that I got from a used bookstore. It's on Gypsy Sorcery, and it was talking about how magic was not snuffed out by the progression of civilization and mankind. It evolved with it.
Mhm.
And
Well, I mean, think about our podcast right now. You're going to put this up. General and I will put this up. And not only are we hopefully affecting some change in the people who listen to us, which is what, we're speaking, which is a art, and we're using the technology that we have, which is a science, and we're hoping to affect a change in people. Those we actually are able to affect a change in, we have rendered magic upon. And because they can watch this a year from now, if everything's still working, we have also stepped into time magic. And people just completely ignore the obvious because they've been conditioned to. Um, I think the technology that we have now has allowed magic a much wider reign than it used to have, to a much wider group of people. And I've told General numerous times that's the reason why I expect them to try to kill the internet.
Yeah, mate. Yeah,
It has backfired on them.
yeah,
yeah, definitely.
yeah. A lot of times, I feel that what has been established for control, um, also, has that effect where it turns, because, when you, for me, with magic, it's not necessarily about control. It's about understanding your place in this universe and how to manage. But you have a lot of human beings now. They think that they're the cream of the crop and that they can, harness nature, and they're dealing with a lot of things that they don't really understand, or they're thinking from a selfish position only.
Yep.
And, when they put these things into effect, when they start making these things status quo and available to other people, they don't realize that, this also gives people a chance to evolve, to find out new things. You know, Back in the day, we were only reading newspapers or seeing what's on the news, but now we can connect to somebody across the world
Mm.
and talk to them about what knowledge they have, what experiences they have. And so you have the common man that's kind of evolving on their own, instead of like the elite being the only ones having this knowledge now.
Well, and the other thing too, a lot of people misinterpret the practice of the cult. In my case, yes, I did the full gambit. I walked in a lot of different shoes while I was learning and while I was passing through that stage.
Mm.
Um, but it wasn't about manipulating other people. It wasn't about changing the environment around me. It was about changing me, and that's a lot of people miss out on the opportunities that a lot of occult practices are actually genuinely designed for. They're designed for self improvement. When you start taking the spiritual aspects of occult practices and knowledge, and you apply it strictly to a material gain or a materialistic ideology, um, or even intellectualism, which is a hard one for me to keep separated because I've researched so much that I'm careful about how I say things. The problem that you have is that people have taken the occult practices and the self improvement. Most of these rituals are about dying to yourself and becoming something better,
Mhm.
and they have completely missed. You're supposed to be improving yourself. I just did a podcast a while ago, and I was talking about you got one finger pointed out, but you're not paying attention to the three that are pointed back at you.
Well, with my students, I always tell them, like, I teach for spiritual evolution because,
There you
I found out that when you change your insides, your world begins to change. The outside, people see the change. They want to know why you've changed, how you've changed,
That's it.
and then that gives you a chance to spread your message and allow them the opportunity to change. And
Yes.
when they say mind over matter, that's real.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
people don't understand that. And like I tell people, I hate going to Barnes and Noble and looking at the New Age section of
Mm.
occult books because uh, the mainstream information is misdirecting people because they're like, oh, get this book to do money magic or
Absolutely.
love magic. But I brought out the fact that you can draw love to you, but if you haven't changed yourself on the inside and become a proper partner, you're not going to keep that love.
Nope.
And
Nope.
so what use is the magic if it's not, long lasting, if it's not enduring?
Well, and Crowley ran into that even in his day. He said to himself that it had been a great disappointment because all he found was dissatisfied housewives and eccentrics that thought they could gain materialistically,
Mm.
and they didn't understand the concept at all. Um, it's if you're not improving yourself, then you're not going to be a benefit to yourself, let alone anybody else. Now, some people would argue that improving yourself is turning your eyes red and becoming demonic. Well, if that's what you think, you know, I'm fine with that. Everybody has to have their own choice and their own path. And people are really hard about hearing somebody like me say that. But we have to have those who are willing to take on the demons in order for us to point and say, hey, that's not how you do it. um, and somebody says, well, that's kind of no. There are going to be those out there who will invoke whatever they need to in order to get their materialistic gains and to gain power that they think they have. And they don't understand, just like in the old days, that the one who has power is the one that you invoked, not the person who did the invocation.
Mm.
Uh, and that's a hard lesson too, because you have all these people randomly. General and I laughed the other day because I said, there are people who are quote unquote practicing magic who have no idea of the difference between invocation and evocation.
Yeah, you definitely see that a lot interchanged, and people don't get it. They just don't get it.
Well, there's a difference between having a conversation with something and making no offers. And that's the other thing people need to understand is it's not it's a conversation with no offers. There is no trade here. I am not giving you anything. If you would like to have a conversation, wouldn't mind having a conversation with you. But you get nothing in exchange other than the conversation.
Yeah.
That means you won't be manipulated by this thing that you have evoked. There are numerous instances throughout history we can find where people have been extremely manipulated by evoking something. Um, but there's where your intuition and having a group to communicate with. You don't do these things on your own, and that's the other problem I have with the New Age.
Another thing is people think that when you evoke an entity, um, or even when you invoke an entity and get information, like you have to listen to this intelligence. And I say no. Like I tell them, there have been plenty of times where I've told gods, demons, angels, I'm not going to do that. you have a choice because you have free will and you have your own path, as you said before. And it's like everything, even these gods and these entities, they have their own perspectives. They have their own ambitions. And you have to put boundaries on these things because if you allow them the opportunity to take over and enslave you, if you worship these beings, blindly, and even worship and practicing with these entities has been confused. But like if you go into it blind and go into it with a sense of not knowing who you are and what you want, then you're going to be taken advantage of.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. People don't. I don't know. You have to have discernment, and that's the other thing that we're lacking today. Um, the environment that we've seen people come up through, especially through the education system and the TV programming, they lack discernment, and that creates issues when you start talking about all this information getting out. And those there are those out there right now that are using the occult and the new age to manipulate people. I mean, you can see that every day.
Absolutely. And then they hide the real use. For example, with demons. Okay, so everybody thinks demons are evil, angels are good, and it's not about good or evil. It's about their place in the universe. If you understand concepts like chaos and order, um, they're both needed. You know, for example, with me, I tell people that I dealt with demons to break myself apart so that I could rearrange myself anew and stronger. The demons will tell you things and force you out of your comfort zone and force you to wake up and look around. And, like that breaks you apart because you've been programmed and brainwashed to think a certain way. And then you have the forces of order, which can be either demonic or angelic, that help put you back together stronger and help you realize who you really are, at the highest level.
Yes, yes. Well, I relate. A lot of people who are my age or people who have practiced for say decades. Um, I relate it to walking across the coals. Um, you have to have the intestinal fortitude and the discernment of yourself, and then walking across the coals is easy. Um, it's the old ceremony, spreading out the hot coals and walking across them barefoot. Um, but if you're just starting out and you get caught in one of those little snares from the new age and these new gurus, it's very, very difficult to get back out of it. It almost becomes cultish.
Yeah. Raven.
Not even
Raven.
almost like it. There are people who are diehard fans. That's all they study. That's all they listen to, and they take no note of other sources. They
Yeah.
don't go looking in any other direction.
Well, it's like when I study history, as much as I dislike a lot of the transcribers that came out of the Jesuits of the time because I know what they did to the texts, I still use their works in reference to older works.
Mm-hmm.
And if I find discordance there, then I need to know why it's discordant. If I find an accordance there, then I need to find out why there's an accordance. And a lot of people who are getting caught into these cult type situations are not seeing that a lot of what they're being told is discordant. It has no resonance with people like us. Um, and they're also discouraged from looking into anything that we might say. That's exactly cult behavior. And you almost have to feel sorry for them and hope that at some point in time they'll snap out of it. But we have we can go all the way back to the time of Rudolf Steiner Rudolf Steiner and those people came out with the Theosophical Societies. And at the same time, the other groups came out with a thing called the New Thought Movement. The New Thought Movement was extremely well financed, extremely well organized. It's almost impossible to find the origins of some of these people who were in it. But when they came out, they were almost a juxtaposition to self-improvement and went immediately into the materialism. Now, that should, that should have been a hint to the people. And the New Thought movement is where we get a lot of the New Age movement that came out, in the 60s and then again in the 80s. And then again in the 2020s. It's like a 20-year cycle. It's really strange. But
well, it's to keep us anchored into this so-called reality. But the thing that people don't get is that spirituality is for the spirit. It's not for the physical plane. Yes, it has an effect on the physical plane, but there's a higher goal.
Well, and I go back to a lot of the old esoteric, including some from various religions. It says, if you are able to maintain your spirituality, which to me is maintaining your meditation state, and you will pass through things unscathed that other people would not survive. And they completely miss that aspect of it. By changing yourself and becoming more spiritual, the physical has less effect on you. You can walk through chaos and people won't even notice you.
Yeah.
But just the thought of it and then just that idea is crazy to think about. Boy, fascinating.
A good example. I was in New York City. I was wearing an Australian oilskin hat. It was raining. I had an oilskin long coat on, and I stood out like a sore thumb. I am obviously not a native of New York.
Well,
but I
sorry, Raven. Sorry, mate. What's that? An oil? Is that like
Australian?
Like
Australian hat and an Australian duster.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. A bit like what thing you wore? Crocodile Dundee.
For riding horses.
Right.
But I walked through New York City unscathed unless I actually approached somebody. It was like I wasn't even there, and I would have been one of the people that would have stood out like a sore thumb. You just people don't understand the power of doing these things the right way. I have gone through the last 2 years unscathed. I mean, literally unscathed. As a matter of fact, with massive improvements, both spiritually and in all the other things. Look at all these people that I'm getting to meet, like you. While everybody else is subdividing even more and more fearful and more anxious and more afraid of everything, we are gathering across borders and distances that they would never even imagine. They don't even talk to their neighbors because they're afraid. That is the key. Yes, you have the temples, and some of them do dark things, some of them do light things, some of them are a very gray mixture. But that is the key. The gathering is the key. It doesn't matter if you're next door to each other or if you're 10,000 miles away. That's the other thing about magic they don't understand is distance and time really make no difference. I tried to convey that in some of my podcasts when I talked about time magic, and astral projection and meditation. We are at a very curious impasse because right now, if they shut all the technology off we use to communicate, they can't prevent our communication once we've made a connection. And they know this.
I've when you were talking about how you dodge chaos when you come to a certain understanding of things and people don't notice you, when it comes to chaos, a big example was COVID. People were getting COVID, the first wave, left and right, and people were fearful. Well, when COVID happened, I literally told myself, like, I'm not getting that, and I didn't. The first time around. The only time I ever got COVID was when I went through my abyssal journey. And like when you talk about not being noticed, I'm a big guy to most people. 6'3", and but so many people don't take notice of me until I'm right up on them, and they'll be like, "Where did you come from?" And I tell them, I just walked up. You know what I'm saying? Um, and when you come to a certain level of spiritual understanding, I feel that the magic that influences most of society doesn't have an effect on you because knowing keeps you from being influenced, knowing the truth. And that's why certain things will just, go off, run off your back like water that totally decimate other people.
Oh yeah. You know, even in the Bible it says, 10,000 will fall on your right hand and 100,000 on your left, and you'll be unscathed. And they don't understand that is being spiritually straight. Now, I'll go back to what I said. You could have somebody who has invoked a demon or a jinn, and they'll be unscathed. Why? Because that's spiritually straight to them, and that's the hardest thing for me to explain to people. Whereas I would not want a jinn to occupy my body, or what people would refer to as a daemon. I don't like the word demon. That's an alteration.
Right.
I do not want a light being occupying me. I'm already a light being. I do not need company. Uh, Now, if you want to hang out with me and have some coffee and or just sit across from me and communicate, I'm great with that. But I don't need anybody riding around in here. It's already crazy and busy enough anyway.
I love that perspective, mate. Brilliant.
But there
Quality,
are
mate.
people,
Quality.
their path is to invoke something, to have a demon or a daemon riding around with them. And that's their choice. That is their path. Um, and we have to be respectful of that. Now, we don't have to tolerate their indiscretions. Nothing in any of the Magi texts or any esoteric work says that we have to tolerate indiscretions from them.
Mm.
That's where we have to be balanced. Because if we meditate, we maintain our field around us and we maintain our field around those who are with us. And by doing what we're doing right now, the three of us have connected over this distance. So that field is present
Yes.
between the three of us. And that prevents those indiscretions from getting in. Now, what they'll do, and General and I have noticed this, is they will get to the technology before we connect and prevent us
They
from
do, mate. They
connecting.
do.
Once we're
You know,
connected, they can't disconnect us. And people need to be aware of that too. Anytime that you're being interfered with in a way that you know intuitively that you shouldn't be, like connecting for a podcast like this, just become more determined to make it happen, not less. It's
Exactly.
now if you have the intuition that maybe this is not the right thing to be doing right now, that's different. But when you know it's a communication you should be making, just become more determined to make it happen, even if you have to do it at a weird time. General and I have been on it at 11 o'clock at night his time, and that's and we've been on at 6 o'clock in the morning my time. Just whatever you have to do to make it happen, because once it happens, they can't break it again. And that's what I mean by indiscretions. There's all kinds of indiscretions. But they don't want the connections being made, and they have set up a system in which the connections can be made through their technology. And once that's done, then the other connections are made. If it's meant to be there.
Raven, how many times? I mean, it's becoming more and more evident that they're trying all they can to prevent any form of conversational progression that we have.
Well, and sometimes it's technological and sometimes it's circumstantial. But like a good example is a friend of mine that we're trying to get on. I'm not going to say his name here, but circumstances were that we had a perfect setup and then something interfered, and it just made him more determined to get on with us. At the And that's how I know if somebody is more determined to get on with this, and they either have a very good intention or a very bad one, and we'll figure it out when we get on the air, right?
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure.
I set up a community, and it's funny because when I talk to certain people, some people will come in crystal clear if you go over voice chat. But like when you talk to certain people who have deep knowledge and they start going in, I've noticed that a lot of times huge chunks of their sentences will be just, blocked out. The connection will fall off, or there will be static and stuff like that. And it's always the same people.
We were talking one night, and I brought up the gin, and I was going to discuss the different aspects of it. And that whole part of the conversation, everything sounded great, but that whole part of the conversation did not come through on the podcast recording. Everything else good.
Zero. It's I've got a daft smirk on my face. It's it's crazy.
To him laugh.
Oh, we love it. We love it.
We love it. I mean, it's just proof positive that you're doing the right thing, and you're going right down the right lines.
Yeah. And what does it do? What does it do, Raven? It just makes us want to do it even more.
Well, what did we do the next time we got online? I went right back and talked about the gin.
Yeah. We do try and yes, we do try and have a conversation with these occult ghost guests. What other word could we name them, Raven? Because they're there, because we can see them in the call, but they don't want to speak.
Well, and my thing too is you have to emphasize your right to communicate. It doesn't matter what entity it is. It doesn't matter how high or low on the echelon it is, because we know they're around us all the time. But we have the right to communicate the knowledge that we have to the best of our ability, and they have no right to interfere with that. So if you start having issues with your communications, express that openly, and make sure that the other people in your communication group express that openly. We have the right to communicate and to exchange knowledge to the best of our ability, and you have no right to interfere. And I am taking that right now, and you'll find out interfere less. Now you may lose recordings, but you'll still be able to communicate the information, which is the important part. And information
for sure, mate.
As in knowledge.
Right.
The recording gets lost for a couple of minutes. That's okay. As long as you guys get to impart knowledge to each other or experiences to each other, which is another type of knowledge.
Yeah, good shout, Raven, mate.
You can't sweat the small stuff. We've had podcasts that were 2 hours long, and we lost like 5 minutes here and 3 minutes there, and I still put them up. I wanted them up as a point of showing people that you don't let the interference win. You just don't.
Yeah. We also, Raven, there's been a couple of shows where I've kept recording, and we've had that background noise.
I also think it's funny because, like, in the new age world, anytime something like that happens or goes wrong, people always blame it. Oh, Mercury's in retrograde. I say I'd never had problems with Mercury being in retrograde, because whenever I have a problem, I just power through it.
Yeah, I love it.
That may be one of the most important things that you have said, or any of us have said in this show, is when there are problems, instill yourself into it.
Embrace.
Put your own energy into it. There is nothing that has any more authority than you do. If something's trying to interfere, no. If something disingenuous, and that includes people too. People are occupied by entities. We know this, or they're overshadowed by them. if someone is trying to overshadow your group or overshadow your conversation, no, you don't have to tolerate it. You know, if you happen to be on a Skype like this and somebody is being a total, just say it the way it is, a total ass, there is a button on here. You can delete them from the conversation. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah.
You have to tolerate with that kind of interference. It is your power, not theirs.
Totally agree.
Spot on that, mate. Spot on.
Guys, I have got to get off the phone. I have
Raven,
another job. It was a pleasure to meet you. It was a pleasure to meet you today. Hopefully we can do another conversation and maybe get a couple hours in, because I got a feeling you have a heck of a lot more knowledge we could share with people.
and building.
Well, we're always building. You know, I've been at this for 35, 40 years. And some of the things that I have come to the realization of have only been through conversations I've had with many, many, many years younger people than me, and many, many people who are newer to this. It wasn't that I didn't know it; it's that I had overlooked it. How's that for awful?
It happens. It happens. But you know, I feel that information is stored within you for the right time to come out. You know, then the light bulb goes on when somebody else brings it up. And I also appreciate talking to other people, because you find out how even though you're from different paths or you've taken different approaches, how you arrive at the same conclusions. And you know, that also goes a long way, because when you first start out with, you know, magic and stuff like that, and stuff happens, you question whether you're crazy. But I've talked to so many people with so many similar experiences where it's like, no, I'm not crazy. No, I'm not the only one.
Oh, they'd love for you to believe that, though, because then you'd just and you would quit pursuing. And you know, that's how they control people. They can that you need to quit pursuing this.
Yeah, it's like that manipulation in it, Raven. You know,
it's blatant. I mean, it's ostracizing you. It's belittling you. It's derogatory. Anything that they can do to make you feel like it's time to quit. And they want you to do that, because then you'll go back and watch TV and you'll accept their programming instead of accepting the program that you were supposed to have all along, which is your own. You know, and that's where we're at. We have to do all this research, even into the hidden things and even into the esoteric things, so that we can find our path and empower ourselves.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. It's getting that balance in it, Raven. And I think that, me personally, surrounding yourself with the correct people, like being in the correct circle, it helps growth a considerable amount. And I feel very, very lucky indeed to be in the circle what I'm in. It's such as yourself, Raven, and you, Zero, as well. I have some fascinating.
Zero, I really want to get you back on so we can have a longer conversation.
Yes.
I'll be around.
Definitely. I have got to go.
Love it.
I appreciate the conversation, and hopefully some people will take some notes off of what Zero has said and what we've been able to point out today. Because,
Raven, before you go, don't mean to interrupt. Do you want to let everybody know they can get hold of you quick before you go, please, sir?
May and I favor everybody. You can find me at Spreaker.com under No Apologies Enough Said, Raven Keefer. And if you really want an extensive research base, my YouTube channel under Raven Keefer, same symbol that I use on my podcasts. You could get overwhelmed with the amount of time it takes to go through all the esoteric and occult stuff I have on my YouTube channel.
I'll definitely subscribe.
It's an incredible channel. I'll add the I'll get the see if I can add the Spreaker to the show notes, Raven.
Yeah, well, you know, and I've got Manly Hall. I got all the Manly Hall presentations that he did and recorded. That library alone is worth having keeping the YouTube channel up, to me.
For sure, mate.
Anyway, guys, be favored. Have a great day. I have got to run.
Nice one, Raven. I'll catch up with you later, mate.
It was a pleasure.
See you soon, brother. Bye, mate. Bye. Zero.
Man,
He is a wealth of knowledge. He's brilliant. It really
people
is.
you introduced me to, they give me the tingles down my spine when we talk.
Yeah, mate. He's brilliant, Raven. I'll send you some links on that shortly. But
Good.
he always blows my mind, mate. Always.
Yeah, I'll be sure to put that up as soon as possible. And I think I still have your information, but just for safety purposes, send me all yours as well, please.
Yeah, no problem, mate. No problem. Zero. It's always a pleasure. Oh, by the way, the link what you sent me has worked, bob on.
Good.
So I will be releasing that. I'm going to be listening to it actually because it was quite impressive. I can't wait to listen to it. I mean, work later, but I want to be listening to it before I head in because that was one of my favorite topics. Anyway, I love it, as you know. But yeah, I really appreciate you jumping on at such short notice as well.
I mean, it's always interesting. I always have fun. I always love talking to people who are educated and are about, speaking the truth,
Yeah.
their own truth, and guiding people to seek their truth as well. So, like I said, anytime, you want to do something along those lines, I'm always down. Always down.
Nice one, mate. Nice one. And it's always an honour, mate, speaking with you. The respect is immeasurable.
And it's like you, in a way, you're like a cornerstone because you've organized these people somehow through, like across the world. You've met these people, you talk to them, and that's a magical thing in itself.
Thanks, mate.
To have
that means a lot.
Yeah, no, like you play a very big part because to be where you're at and say, hey, you know what, I want to talk to all these people. I don't care who they are, where they're from, just as long as they're legit. That's an immense task to take on.
Thank you. They're much more than just words, mate. And I couldn't agree with you anymore. It's getting that. Well, it's a challenge to try and get that balance. So far, so good. I think. If I didn't think something would work, I mean, like for example, today, if I didn't think it would work, I wouldn't try. There was another incredible guest that I did want to introduce as part of the roundtable, but I don't know. It was online, and then possible, connection issues. We've had a lot of connection issues lately with Skype.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like we tried, me and Raven tried to do a roundtable on Saturday night, and like I've done today, you create the call as on Skype, create a new meeting. I did everything as I normally do, sent it to Raven, and it kept failing, as if like it was like not a stable Wi-Fi connection, but it was.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to like plan B where I'd ring Raven like direct on Skype, but Raven had have his phone, and it wouldn't be ringing, but yet it is. It's weird, mate. It's weird. There was something that I wanted to ask you, Axel Zero. You know, like your will be your third book, your latest one about God is Great.
Okay, go for
Is
it.
that, yeah, you know, it was with regards to angels. Would it be sort of similar, based to like the angelic structure in the Book of Enoch, like that? So I'm not saying the same, but similar.
Um, it involves the Watcher angels, which are mentioned in the Book of Enoch, but it's not necessarily. It's different in a way where it's not the approach of these are evil beings. It's
Right.
from a neutral standpoint to see what their perspective is, as well as the perspective of the light angels, the ones that are like the mainstream good guys, when I can stomach them, and what they really. It's man, it's been a wild ride because it's the study of who they are, not just what they do. And you know, when you go deep into angelic magic and meet these beings, you realize that they're not just alien in a dimensional term, you know, in a dimensional way, but also they come from different star systems. Um, you begin to understand why they act the way they act. And that way, I feel like when you get to know them on a personal level, it's easier to kind of manage the magic because with angels, they're very organized, you know, so they can get to the point where some of them can be kind of bossy, and you gotta like take a step back and be like, hey, you know, I'm just here asking you for information. I'm not telling you, I'm not, you know, I'm not giving you permission to tell me what to do exactly. But even though they have those tendencies, because they feel like it's their responsibility to help out humanity, since humanity is a younger species, so to speak. What was I saying? You know, a lot of them do have good intentions.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because they all have different personalities, they as well have their own ambitions. There are some that are conscripted by the demiurge, and you know they're questionable in whether they really want, you know, good things to happen for humanity. And then there are ones that are independent. So the ones that are independent, I find many of them are trying to help humanity come to a realization of who they are, truly, in a spiritual sense. And a lot of these angels are also attached to, they are old gods that were demoted by Christianity and right hand thinking and belief systems. But they are also attached to older gods. And when you start talking to these beings, they'll start telling you about these older gods and how to get in touch with these older gods and how things really are. And they pull no punches. And a lot of people think that in the new age kind of belief systems, they think that, you know, they treat angels as these love and light beings and they want to give a hug and always comfort you. And it's like, yeah, there are angels that are like that, but a lot of the angels are actually soldiers. Like they'll be nice, but they have a soldier mentality. Um, they may be civil, but you don't want to piss them off because it's just like when you have a person from the military who comes back to civilian life, they still have that soldier mentality. So you don't want to piss them off because you don't know what they're going to do. And the angels are the same way. But angels, they have certain triggers. They can show a range of emotions because they have it. Um, they forge familial bonds. Like when you connect with them, like I call it harmonization. You get to a point where you can hear them telepathically. You can feel what they feel. And so you learn to have empathy for them, but you also learn to have empathy for the rest of the human race as well. And there are a lot of lessons to be learned by the so-called fallen that are beneficial, and yet these beings are portrayed as evil, which is insane. You there?
Yes, mate. Sorry, mate. Sorry, mate.
It's all good.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around, right? There's obviously going to be like a hierarchy, so to speak. Um, would I be wrong to referencing your incredible grimoire of damnation, Zero?
No, I mean, like anytime you want to reference it, you have my blessing.
99% of the podcasts I do, I would have it just in case, because it is like it's fucking fascinating. Like for example, I've not mentioned this to you. I know it's like sort of like going off track, but I think everything's relevant. How do I pronounce this? Choronzon. Is that, if I pronounce that correct?
Everybody has a different pronunciation. I call the spirit Corazon. But I always tell people tomato, tomato. As long as the spirit answers you, that's all that matters.
Love it, mate. Yeah. Where does this entity set fit into everything? Because does it? What I mean is it of a significance?
Karanzan is the spirit that is basically the gatekeeper of the abyss. He was
Right.
the one that I had to. Well, Karanzan is actually, according to Lilith, a legion. So Karanzan is many beings in one.
Right. Okay.
But Karanzan is one of the entities that you speak to before going into the abyss. You have to have their blessing first. And
like a gatekeeper type.
Yeah. And Crowley is attached to that because Crowley went to the desert. I forgot the guy that he brought with him because I don't have my notes on hand. But that was a very important part of Crowley's career as a magician.
Yeah.
And it's the abyss is very scary for some because all they do is they focus on, well, I'm going to go through bad things in my life.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about it is, it's necessary. And even if you're not a magician or you don't consider yourself a magician, we all go through our abyssal journeys at one time or another. So it's better to do it on your terms than to have it kick in and you not know what the hell is going on.
Yeah. Do you think that an individual could go through their journey without them even knowing? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Because as spiritual beings, we have cycles, and we're going to go through different cycles, and we're going to evolve some way or another. we're going to come to the realization that we need to, some way or another. And either we can choose to do it, or we can be dragged kicking and screaming.
Right. Yeah, I get you, mate. Yeah, it's things like this, Zero, that make you realise that of just how many possibilities that there really could potentially be without you even knowing.
It's mind blowing, and at
Yeah,
first
that
it's scary, But I feel that after a while, it brings back the beauty in life, because when you live a normal life, so to speak, things get kind of dull, things get stagnant, things start repeating themselves over and over again. It's shown in, the fact that there is no original content these days. People are remaking movies, and they're doing it worse.
mate.
You know,
Yeah.
People have these cycles where they go to work, and then on the weekends they go to the bar, hang with their mates, they drink, and then that's their life.
Yeah, and then repeat every week the same,
Yeah. But when you get introduced to the magic and you see how big the universe is, the multiverse is, even the world around you, and how much there is to explore and to find out, I feel like it adds a new dimension to life.
You just hit the nail on the head there, mate. You couldn't have worded it any better. And that is what this is. That is what, and this is why I find, like, I'm still learning. Every podcast I do, to me, it's like another lesson. And the more somebody else might see as being bizarre or weird, to me that's more interesting. You know what I mean? I find everything fascinating, especially when I have a conversation with the likes of yourself. Well, anybody really, because everybody's unique in their own way.
And that's the beauty of things. And that's why, how they say variety is the spice of life.
Sure, mate, yeah.
We have society trying to create this cookie cutter standard, trying to, make us all the same, and it's not natural. It's not natural.
Mate, if we was all the same, the world would be a boring place, wouldn't it?
I would shoot myself.
yeah, it would be fucking torture, that, mate, wouldn't it? It really would.
And it's like a breath of fresh air, because by accepting something different, by learning about other people's cultures or their thoughts, by learning about their experiences, it opens up new thoughts for you, and new avenues for you. And therefore, like, I'm always learning. Even though I've been in this, I tell people, just when you think you're getting the hang of magic, that's when it blows your mind. And, I tell people it doesn't matter who we come upon, whether they're older than us, the same age, or if they're younger than us. Yeah. There's always something that we can learn from their perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what also is equally as fascinating again is, I mean, prime example tonight. I knew the conversation, the possibility of conversation with us. What direction it could go to, whichever direction it would be as equally as fascinating, whichever way you'd look at it. That's what it's that when you that uncertainty, but being certain at the same time, so you know it's gonna go by fucking fire. But which fire is to be determined as and when and like right now, if you know what I mean.
Well,
like not knowing the direction, but knowing it's going to be mint.
People who discuss things on an intellectual level come together, who are willing to discuss things on an intellectual level. They feed off of one another. So one person may have an idea, and then the other person capitalizes on that and adds to it, and it becomes its own thing. It becomes bigger, and it's like every time I have a conversation about magic with people who know their stuff, it's always like going down a rabbit hole, except you have a partner with you this time.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I get you, mate. I get you. Excuse me. Sorry, mate.
All good.
With regards to your title, God is Grey. Is that what your title is going to be, mate?
That's what they told me to change the book. I had a totally different title, and it was just going to start off with The Watchers. And
The Watchers,
yeah, but then they kicked in and said, no. They said, put all the angels that you meet in there. Okay. And they were like, yeah, change the title. Call it God is Grey. Okay.
Very interesting, that, mate.
Yeah.
And is it like, I mean, you could say, is it continuously growing and growing and growing? I'm so fucking intrigued, mate, with it's like you said, what the capabilities are. I mean, it's like the lesser key, how you've got your demons, the names, what they offer, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Would this be like a similar format like that, like what they offer, but with a much more base to it, like a character?
While it has sigils in it, it is not as complex as a lot of people make angel magic to be.
Right.
It's actually very easy to come in contact with them. I've come upon books that have simple ways of contacting, these entities, and I have books that have complex where you have to draw this complex circle with all these markings on it and do it on a certain day and all this. And I'm the type of person, if I really want to do that, I'll do it. But that seems like a waste of time to me, especially when I'm at the point where you can just call upon these entities and some of them will come just from you calling upon their names, and they'll talk.
Fascinating.
And really what I think is wanting a genuine connection. As long as you want to have that genuine connection, they'll come to you. And if they want you to contact them in a certain way, they'll tell you. They'll be like, hey, we see you, but the next time you talk to us, do X, Y, and Z first.
Right. All right. So that would be like the preferred method.
I would say not for the beginner, because for beginners, they often need something to put themselves in a magical mindset. And that's what sigils are for. That's what doing the whole ritual is for, is to create an atmosphere where you feel comfortable tapping into your own power. And
is that both? Because I guess that would work both ways. Then, want to like their comfort, because they're like giving you that heads up of like, this is how we would prefer it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, they have preferences too. There are certain things that they like, different entities, you know, in some books it talks about how they like certain smells. They respond to certain colors. And when it comes to angels, they they like to have things that incorporate elements that they are composed of. And when I
Right.
say that, angels, a lot of angels deal with light as well as sound. So they will have a way of you contacting them by utilizing sound or light within the ritual.
Ah, interesting that, mate. It is.
So
It's quite complex, really, isn't it?
it is. It is. It's in some cases it's simple. In some cases it's complex, but it's very interesting to learn about the nature of these beings. And
Yeah.
when they start coming to you and they start giving you all this crazy information and stuff, it's it's fascinating. It's fascinating to learn about who they are, what their preferences are, what their fortes are, who they're related, who they consider themselves to be related to, um, and how they interact with other entities.
Do you know what you just said, then, Zero? That is really interesting. Like the relation, the related to that. Would that be like a bloodline um,
Absolutely.
situation? Right, right.
I mean, may not be composed of blood
Angelic
and
bloodlines.
muscle like human beings
Yeah,
are, but they do have different bodies and they do have families and they do, like they do. There are actually angels as well as demons that are in corporeal form, in human
yeah.
form, walking around, and people don't really understand that. They don't believe that. They don't know it. And the funny thing is that they show this all the time in movies or in shows, and people take this as fiction, but it's not.
Right.
and and a lot of the things that we see and take as entertainment is actually telling a true story if you know where to look. So there
Ah,
are physical angelic bloodlines here on Earth, as well as demonic ones.
are you able to disclose, or not? I'm just really intrigued, mate. Really am. D- would the angelic bloodlines have any relation to demonic bloodlines?
Well, if you go into the etymology of demon, which is
Yeah.
daemon, that was actually an umbrella term that covered angels as well. Because the meaning of angel simply means messenger. And a
Yes.
messenger, like a god can be a messenger,
Yeah.
a so called demon can be a messenger. We can be messengers ourselves, you
Yeah.
know. So that's just a title. But if you look at the word daemon, a daemon is a god, a superpower, an inspiration, a guide. And the angels are all of those things. So angels themselves can also be considered daemons.
Interesting, mate. Really is. It's just it's why it's such a fascinating subject. I mean, from growing up watching horror films, I guess it stems from there. You know, Dario Argento's demons. The mask scratches the face. It's a classic, mate. Classic. Um, yeah, I guess that's where it all stems from. That
A lot of it
that
does,
fascination. Yeah,
and it's the curiosity.
they got
I know, like with
curiosity. Yeah,
me, it was the curiosity of just knowing the perspective of the other side. It's like with Christianity, they talk about this. entity being evil, and it's like, why? Like, you hear it from other Christians, you hear it from people that have never come in contact with these entities. And so in order to get a whole picture, you need to understand both sides. And so that was one of the reasons why I got into demonology and contacting different entities, as opposed to just accepting what I was taught through Christianity.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you go into these things with a neutral approach, they have a lot to say. They have a lot to say on both sides. And you find out that the narrative that we're given is very different from the actual happenings. For example, biblically, they talk about 2 rebellions in heaven. But what they don't talk about is that there were multiple rebellions. There's more than 2. There's at least 5 that I know of.
Right.
And I've even read in one of the sources that there were 13.
13.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't say that from my gnosis, my personal experiences, but there was I forgot the source, but one person said that there were 13 rebellions. And then it makes you question, it's like, okay, well, if heaven was so perfect, why are all these angels rebelling all the time?
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that there will be a reason somewhere, or something that's triggered that rebellion?
Yeah. And you tend to question, okay, well, if the so-called Christian God is almighty and the most powerful being, and you have these angels who know this being personally, why would they even rebel? If it was something
Yeah,
that they knew that they could not win, why would they fight in the first place?
yeah, yeah. Again, this is why, because I'm unsure. It's what makes it's so intriguing. It's such a fascinating subject, mate. Always will be. Always will be.
I agree. And
And
it's just like, it's funny because the more that comes to light, the more questions you have, and it just keeps going and going and going.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just brilliant, mate. And especially when somebody with your level of knowledge in this subject, it's you can look on, you can Google things, or search online, but it's different than actually having a conversation.
I
You
agree.
you know what I mean, don't you? Straight away, you know exactly what I mean. Um, that's why I just love speaking about demons. It's a brilliant subject. Taboo to a lot of people, very taboo subject. Um, they think that you're actually, just because to me it's a fascinating topic, subject. It doesn't mean that I am a bad person at all.
No, not at
You
all.
know, you know, and how somebody could judge by say, oh, it's a bad topic to look into. Maybe it is to some people, but again, I think it's all about your intention. My intentions, I've got nothing nefarious about my intention. It's basically researching a topic that's fascinating to me.
Well, the thing I tell people is that I've never had a demon tell me to kill people. I've never had a demon to tell me to do anything, crazy to another person, malicious
Yeah,
to another person. The only thing that demons will tell you is, they want you to have a backbone. They want you to stand up for yourself.
yeah,
And if they're going, berserk in any way, there's a reason behind that, and it's just like any other person,
Yeah.
that gets violent, so to speak. Well, what triggered
Yeah.
that person? You have to ask that. You have to get to the source. And I tell people that, the reason why a lot of people have these negative possessions, and this comes from mostly from a certain religious perspective, or religious group. And I tell them that it's because of the way you portray these entities. If you portray somebody as an enemy, which many people do with demons,
Yeah.
and you treat them like an enemy, what do you expect them to do? They're going to protect themselves. They're going to give you the same energy right back.
Exactly. It's like having a conversation. If you speak to somebody like that piece of shit, they're going to speak to you like a piece of shit back.
Absolutely.
It's just that's how things are, mate. But yeah, that's a good way of portraying it, mate.
And it's amazing how people take hearsay as truth, and that's basically all what the right hand belief systems are doing. They're saying, oh, this is a bad guy, this is a good guy. And I feel like that dualism that they instill in these belief systems is just for control. It's like saying, oh, hey, we're on the good side, so just listen to everything that we say and tell you to do, as opposed to learning both sides and then, choosing for yourself what to accept and what not to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Perfectly worded, mate. Zero. I see what time it is, mate, because I am working soon. Mate, once again, absolutely fascinating conversation. Quality episode. I love it, mate. I love it. Are we good to wrap it up now, mate? Definitely. We've got the third anyway. So, I mean, if you want, we can same setup if you want.
Yeah.
Get the time sorted out, and I'll sort things out with Raven. We could carry on from today if you want.
Yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant.
If you want to do something beforehand, let me know. If I'm available.
Oh yes,
available.
Definitely, mate.
But I've definitely got the third on my calendar, so I'm ready for it.
Mate. Sorted, mate. Before we finish today's recording, mate, do you want to let everybody know they can get hold of you, please, mate?
Yeah, I'm Zerko Kathos, known to my friends as Zero. I have the YouTube channel Demonosophy and Beyond, and all my information, as well as how to contact me via email, is in the About page on that channel. And anything that I need to elaborate on, or any links, are provided in the video descriptions when it comes to books, websites, and what else I'm getting involved in. So just stay tuned, stay aware, and keep it moving.
Nice one, mate. I love that. Zero, thank you very much once again, mate. You are a legend. Seriously. I'm going to stop recording now, mate. Nice one.